So the concept of multiomics for me is to be able to say, well, can we look at what is happening in a cell in a more complete way, and then extrapolate that to a tissue, an organism, a population. And the more we understand, the more we can understand the pathway that the biological system is taking. What is coded in our DNA is affected by the environmental cues we have, and that might be translated into the transcriptome in a certain way through epigenetics. And then that in turn could be controlled in certain ways before proteins are created, and that you analyze that with proteomics. But then there's glycomics and metabolomics and other chemical molecules in the cell. How all these interaction in this extremely complex orchestra, right, creates a sound that's very distinctive, but in its parts seems almost elusive, right? And I think if you talk to an average person and say, if I played you a concerto, you know, by Beethoven or Mozart or whoever, you'd probably recognize it. But if I told you to tell me the notes that the oboe is playing versus the first violin, you could probably not tell me that, right? And that, I think, is the fundamental truth. We know what a disease looks like. But when it comes to decoding the orchestra and what they're playing and what's happening in the biological system, that's complex. And I think the analogy I would say, and taking probably overstretching the analogy further, is, you know, we kind of have an idea what the violins are doing right now, but we are still not quite sure what the brass section is doing, and no one's got any idea about the percussion section. And there's a couple of weird instruments like the harps and so on that get used very occasionally, but when they do, they create a whole new layer of complexity. So that's kind of the state of biology, right? If we really want to understand that music, we have to understand what each instrument's doing. And I think that's where technologies like Oxford Nanopore, where you can interrogate the transcriptome, the genome, the methylome, and many other aspects, and the proteome too, as we've recently shown, and many other biological systems, means that we are moving ever closer to this promise of putting that orchestra together, or putting the sheet music behind the orchestra together, to understand exactly how it all works.